Concerns are growing over safety in Northern Ireland following a third night of rioting. 32 officers have been injured in the violence on Monday and Tuesday, the worst of which took place in Ballymena. The disorder first began after a peaceful protest over an alleged sexual assault in the town and has since spread to other areas. Well, joining me now to talk about this growing unrest is Andy George, President of the National Black Police Association. Andy, thank you so much for talking to us. You're actually currently in London, but I know that you're based and you're from Northern Ireland. Just give us a sense from your perspective of what's happening there right now.
So what we're seeing is what started out as a peaceful protest against that alleged sexual assault growing into increasing levels of violence and vulnerable, isolated ethnic minority communities in Ballymena and now beyond Ballymena itself being targeted. Levels of violence that we haven't seen for quite a while in Northern Ireland. Windows being smashed, attempts to burn families in their own homes. You know, the level of violence and hostility that has been directed towards families, men, women, and children in houses, just going about their daily business, trying to contribute to Northern Ireland society, has been deeply impactful and something that should concern all of us.
I mean, Andy, yeah, deeply impactful, incredibly shocking scenes. I mean, it was described by Storm Justice Minister Naomi Long as a 3-day festival of hate and destruction. And as you say, you know, people are inside their homes, they're fearful for their lives. I mean, this kind of thing, for how much longer is this going to go on for?
You know, hopefully the police service in Northern Ireland are doing all they can to dampen tensions, to bring offenders to justice. They've called in for mutual aid from Great Britain as well. So, you know, the unfortunate thing, but fortunate in some ways as well, is the police service in Northern Ireland has had a large history of dealing with these kind of issues. But you know, we're moving into the marching season. We're moving in towards the 12th of July when people are off, when weather's better, and where we see usual pockets of violence around the Sectarian divide and Protestant Catholic issues. For us, if people are now, you know, mass gatherings, that could turn violent at any point, and you know, we are just completely worried. What I would say as well, I spoke to some of those commanders on Monday. Monday was a particularly unpredictable day, I think, for policing. One of the people in charge of that incident said in his 29-year career policing during some of the troubles, it was the worst shift that he's ever had, and he was very fearful that somebody could die. And that's some of the big impacts that the normalisation of violence, the division, the hatred that we've unfortunately seen so much of in Northern Ireland has spread across, and ethnic minority communities that are trying to do what they can to assimilate and be part of Northern Ireland society are now being targeted in such a violent and racist way.
Ethnic minority communities, also ethnic minority officers as well, who will be facing this.
No, completely. And I've spoke to some officers that were on the front line on Monday night, others that have been brought in now on Tuesday and Wednesday. They have to hold the line like every other police officer, but they also have to deal with the deeply traumatic impact that they have, that feeling concern about their loved ones, seeing people that look like them being targeted in this racist violence as well. It's been reassuring that the Police Service of Northern Ireland have put out comms and have recognised that, and it's been helpful that they have engaged the Ethnic Minority Police Association, our local association in Northern Ireland, asking for advice on how they can support officers and staff better, but also then utilise our lived experience to reassure communities in Northern Ireland as well.
And there's been a call as well for other police forces across the UK to help as well. How much is that is needed?
Yeah, definitely. And no, it's definitely been needed. And that's the problem in Northern Ireland as well. Whilst police services in England and Wales had an uplift of 20,000 officers between 2019 and 2022, the police service of Northern Ireland didn't. Our police officer numbers should be around about 7,500. We're currently sitting at 6,300. There have been business cases put forward to bring that up to 7,000. It is when we see violence at this level, which isn't always unique to Northern Ireland. We've seen violence in Salford last night, but the situation and the circumstances in Northern Ireland are so much more different than other parts of the UK. We have still got active paramilitary units that are working. We have the normalisation of violence. We have a deeply divided society in general. So all of these things need to come together. We also have legislation that hasn't been brought in. Judge Marlin done a review on hate crimes a few years ago, that's still sat on the shelf. The executive office had a race equality strategy, which is sat from around about 2015. Still nothing been brought forward. In Northern Ireland, we had our first black councillor in 2023, first black mayor in 2024. That representation, that ability for communities of colour to feed into all of the institutions in Northern Ireland just isn't there. So it isn't always impacting those in positions of power. And what I would ask is that they reach out to communities, they ask for organisations like us to fill that gap of knowledge, experience, and what it's like to be somebody different in Northern Ireland, so that we can make sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to contribute to society and an equal opportunity of being protected in the society that we live as well.
And Andy, people will draw comparisons, unfortunately, to the kind of unrest and rioting that we saw following the Southport murders last year.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the level of violence that we've seen. Belfast was not immune from that either. We've seen large scale violence. We've seen businesses and attacked in South Belfast as well. You know, there needs to be something done. There's the fueling of misinformation on social media, in the aftermath of Southport and other areas, the mass mobilisation of people and almost dehumanising sections of the community that people now see as being the woe of all problems in the UK. We need to build safer and more cohesive communities. We need to focus in on the things that unite us rather than those things that divide us. And I think more could be done to really build a more cohesive strategy to bring everybody together.
But Andy, it's 2025 and you're saying that you've never seen it so bad or since the Troubles. I mean, how have we got to this position in 2025 when people are putting signs up outside their homes saying, I am not this, I'm not that, please don't target me. How have we come to this?
I think it's a question that we often ask ourselves, we ask our colleagues. I think the normalization of, kind of on the mainstreaming of views and attitudes that were pushed. We've seen a large scale attack on woke policing. In Northern Ireland, we had to change the demographic of the police service. The police service I joined, I've 26 years done this year. In 1999, there were 13,500 police officers backed up by 7,000 military personnel. We used to have to fly by helicopter just to do a road traffic collision. That's how far society can go when division is allowed to thrive. I think we've normalised racist behaviour. We've singled out sections of the community. We've seen people in positions of power in politics and other places that have specifically targeted and legitimised attacks on minority communities. I don't think racism has ever fully been dealt with across the globe in the UK as well. And we need to just understand that those attitudes and behaviours can escalate, and they can escalate to the point where people's lives are put in danger. So it starts with speech, it starts with the marginalisation and dehumanising of sections of society, but it leads to an impact on people's lives and the potential for them to lose their lives. So, we need to make sure that whilst we're in 2025, we need to make sure that this kind of behaviour is condemned in its strongest possible way that it is, and that we also move beyond the words and build some sort of action after this to try to deal with all of the causes of it.
How much of a problem, though, is social media? You mentioned it earlier when we talk about the rhetoric and the racism. It's there are platforms out there where it can be easily shared.
Completely. And, some people have chatted about some of these social media platforms being the digital town square. The reality is you could not get away with some of the things you do in social media in the real town square. If you hid your identity on the street, if you were being abusive and trying to start a row with people walking past, you would be arrested. We've had powers of arrest for a long time. Me as a police officer, I have arrested people for using foul language outside nightclubs, outside of areas, disorderly behaviour. These kind of things have always been there. There've been libel and defamation laws, but at the minute we're trying to. The argument for free speech is an excuse to provide the racist and offensive kind of attitudes, words, and behaviours that people want to without any consequence. But there have always been hate laws that have been there. There always have been laws around speech, and speech has always had limits. So we need to make sure that all of the attacks on those types of things are dealt with, and that, as you said, social media and the online environment is policed in the same way that the public spaces are.
And Andy, to finish up, you did say, you did say if these riots continue, the kind of violence that you're seeing, it could get really out of hand to the point where somebody loses their life. We desperately hope that doesn't happen. But is that a genuine concern that you have with what you've seen so far?
Yeah, definitely. It's been a concern of myself, my colleagues, and the communities that we come from. We spoke to people. Some of them were saying, some of it was avoidable, but yes, we have a definite concern that that's where it could go. And we've been lucky so far in that, we've heard of families that were hiding behind doors as their windows were being smashed, as people were trying to burn their house down, putting sofas up against doors to protect themselves. That's the level. All it takes is one of those petrol bombs or fires to grow a little bit further, and somebody could die. That's something that we are deeply concerned about. Something that should worry us all. And having been 26 years in the police service, 10 years in the armed response team, I have policed disorder like this. And it's a really difficult thing to have to do. But if it's sustained, if it's long term, there will be challenges to other areas of policing. And the community at large is made less safe by this violence that's being directed at this minute in time.
Mm. The Secretary of State, Hilary Benn, though, said that, about the destruction that we've seen the last 3 days. He says this is not what the region is about. And it's important to hold on to that, isn't it? And, a word of reassurance from you, because your officers are out there, they are on the streets, there have been some arrests made as well. Some words of reassurance for people who might be worried there.
Completely. And I obviously been born and raised in Northern Ireland. It's where I call home. I have always felt welcomed. There have always been racist kind of things that have happened during the course of my life, but the large percentage of Northern Ireland are accepting. They are some of the most friendliest people you'll ever meet. So we hope that everybody will tap into the true Northern Ireland that exists, and that we end up pushing back against hate and leave those that are intent on being racist and engaged in this violence on the margins of society.
All right. On that note, Andy George, President of the National Black Police Association, thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you.